Hello, my name is Thomas Osborne, and welcome to this video series entitled A Percussionist Guide to Dorico. This will take you from first down every step of the way, including making percussion kits, engraving, playback, and a whole bunch of other really cool features that Dorico has to offer. Dorico is a very powerful software, and with the right tools, you can expedite your workflow and create some very beautiful scores that are especially designed for percussionists. So let's get started. Once you open Dorico, you'll see a page that looks like this. You will want to click on Create New. And then on your left-hand side, you'll see a bunch of different templates scrolling all the way through a bunch of genres such as band, choir, jazz, marching band. You get the idea with that. For now, we're just going to select the empty template. If you already have some details about your score that you would like to fill in here, you can do so on the right side of this page. Things such as project title, the composer, page size, raster size, music font, and any other kinds of fonts you have. Don't worry, you can change all of this later. But for now, we're just going to put in as a percussion quartet for our title, and we'll just put my name for the composer for now. I'm not worried about page size or raster size for the moment, but I am worried about my music font, of which I'm going to change to Finale Maestro. This is just the font that I use. I prefer the way Finales looks over Bravura, but Bravura is also a beautiful font, and I use a font called DDIN for most of my scores. So I have changed those right here. You also have the opportunity to change the time signature, the number of bars that your score starts with, and the key signature, but I'm not going to touch those for now. You don't need to worry about that. You can always add more or change anything once you create the project. Once you have created your project, you will have three options to add players in front of you, that being add single player, add section player, and add ensemble. There are a few small differences between these types of players. A single player is defined as an individual player who plays one or more instruments, basically one person who has their own part who's reading the sheet of music. Moving on to the section player, a section player is defined as a group of players that all play the same instrument. The most notable difference between this and the single player is that a section player cannot switch between instruments like the single player can. With that exception, these players behave pretty similarly. And then finally, you have your ensemble players. This is for your gargantuan orchestra pieces. We're not really going to worry about this for now. Single players are, especially for percussion quartets, what you're going to want to be using. These are the only players that can be changing between instruments, in addition to the fact that they will have the same characteristics as section player or ensemble players if you were to choose those. So we're just going to select a single player for now. And what you'll see here is all of the instruments that Dorico has to offer to you out of the box. You can select an instrument here for your player, or you can leave the player empty-handed as I have done here, and in the bottom panel you can add additional players. Since all the players are still empty-handed, you'll still see the single section ensemble players as well, but I prefer to keep everything in the same workflow and just add players from the bottom. Since we're writing percussion quartet, we'll have 4 players in the Players tab over here. To do that, we just need to press the plus button, and again we'll have our instrument panel where you can select a bunch of different instruments. To clarify, since this is a single player, you can add as many instruments from this list as you want. You just need to add them one at a time. Since we're doing a percussion quartet, let's start with some unpitched percussion. And we can use the search bar for snare drum. And then we'll click snare drum and then simply click add. And now we have a score that is shown here with our snare drum on it, since it's the only instrument in the score so far, with our title, the composer, and all the other details. Moving on to player 2, let's add a vibraphone. 3 octave is fine. We'll click add, and it'll add the vibraphone in the correct score order. You'll notice that vibraphone and snare drum are now in score order in the Players tab as well. Going on to player 3, let's do a 5 octave marimba with 2 staves. And once again, we now have a marimba as well in score order. Adding player 4, let's add another marimba again. Why not? 2 5 octave marimbas. That's perfect. So as you can see now, we have all 4 of our players in score order. We have vibraphone, marimba 1, marimba 2, and snare drum at the bottom since it is an unpitched instrument. If you wish to add additional instruments to a player, you can do so just by clicking the plus tab again to add an instrument. Since we have an unpitched percussionist here, let's add a field drum. Oh, we do not have a field drum as an option. So let's add a tenor drum. Medium is fine. This doesn't really matter except for playback, and even then it's not super important. In fact, since we had some issues getting a field drum into our score, let's change the instrument's name. You can click on tenor drum, the 3 dots, and then click Edit Names as shown here, and it'll bring you to a panel showing the current name of the instrument as well as the short name for the instrument. You can change things such as fonts, font size, and a bunch of other things here. But most importantly, the text of the instrument. So let's put in field drum. And for short, we can just do the same format as I have here. Maybe just F for short for field, and drum for short for drum. You are also able to save it as the default for the instrument by checking that box. As well, if you ever have plural field drums, you can change the names with the plural names tab up there. Once you are done, you can just click the OK button, and now we have field drum in our score as well. Another thing I'd like to change is the name of the players itself. Right now we have vibraphone, marimba 1, marimba 2, and snare drum and field drum as our names for these players. But for this piece, I just want to call them player 1, 2, 3, and 4. So how we do that is we right-click on vibraphone. Make sure you are selecting the blue tab outside of it, not the white vibraphone tab inside of it. That is the instrument itself. We're going to click Rename Player, and you'll see a pop-up that shows the full name and the short name for the player. So we're just going to type in player 1 for our full name and P1 for short, and then work on changing those parts for all of these. So we have player 2, P2, player 3, P3, and finally player 4, P4. So as you can see, we now have all 4 players named accordingly, with their respective instruments listed inside of each player. Now moving over to the Layouts tab on the right side of our screen, you can think of layouts similarly to just regular parts for Finale or Sibelius. Layouts are the parts that will be printed that your musicians will be reading. So for right now, we have layouts as full score. Player 1, player 2, player 3, and player 4 each have their own parts as well. Dorico also gives you the option to add custom layouts of your own. You can base these layouts based off of the full score marked by this conductor right here, or by the music stand you can add an instrumental part layout. While this may not be very useful for a percussion quartet, this can be very, very useful for things like creating a front ensemble score for your marching band or creating a wind score if you're writing a wind ensemble piece. So to show an example, let's make a marimba score. We'll use the full score layout. And as you can see on the Players tab on the right, players 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all highlighted with checkboxes now to include on your new layout. We're going to uncheck player 1 and player 4 because we just want the 2 marimba parts. And as you can see in our new layout now, we have just marimba 1 and marimba 2 to be printed. It's super easy to rename. We can just click the rename button and type in marimba score, and it will show up in our layouts page. We'll drag it to the top just to keep things organized. Turning our attention to the bottom panel of our screen, we have a panel called Flows. You can think of flows as sub-projects within your macro project, often using it for things like multiple movements in a piece. We're going to make this 2 movements just to show an example. So we're going to add a flow, and you will see it creates a new tab in the Flows panel, automatically highlighted so you can rename it. We'll rename that movement 2. And just to keep things continuous, we will rename flow 1 as movement 1. So now we should have both flows showing up in our score. We can see movement 2 right over here. Just 1 beat for now since we haven't filled it with any information. Shows up in the same panel as movement 1 right here, which still has all 32 bars that we've asked it to fill out. Don't worry about all this space in your second flow so far. We'll talk about writing between flows once we start writing. The last thing we will do in our Setup tab is navigate up towards File and change our project info with Command-I, or you can just click it as seen here, but Command-I is a keyboard shortcut for that. And as you can see, we have both of our flows as well as the master project info that we can adjust a bunch of different settings for. Both Master Project Info as well as Movement 1 and Movement 2 will all have different details that you can customize individual to each flow. It is very important to put Project Info into this panel as you're moving along with your workflow, because once we get to engrave mode later, we can add things called project tokens, so this information will autofill into your score. So for example, if you have a subtitle, you'll want to type it in here. Or if you want to change any information like your dedication, the arranger, lyricist, artist, copyist, or any copyright information that you need to include in your score. You can also change things such as work number, composer dates, or any other information. And you can do that individually for each movement or flow if you would like to specify that. Just in case we need any info later, I'm going to put in the subtitle from Percussion Quartet for my piece, as well as my name in the composer slot, in case we ever need tokens just for these flows. Another super important pro tip is to always click apply, wait a few seconds, and then click close. If you're a little bit too speedy or forget to click apply, sometimes Dorico will not save the information that you have inputted and will save you 20 seconds of your time and frustration. And that is all you need to know for starting your first percussion ensemble score. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you'll join me in future videos as we start your Dorico journey together.